In the last video we talked about unicellular living things. Those were living things that have only one cell. In this video we're going to talk about multicellular living things. Remember, multi means many. So those are living things that have many cells. And one good example of a multicellular living thing would be humans. Because humans are multicellular, because a human body doesn't just have 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 cells, they actually have 80 trillion cells. That number is really big. It's actually bigger than all of the people that ever lived on the earth combined. Right? So it's a huge number, and that many cells is in every single human body. Now it's also important to realize that we don't just have many different cells, but we also have many different types of cells. So for example, we have more than 200 different types of cells. We call these different types of cells, we call them specialized cells. So you can imagine every single cell in our body is specialized to do one specific task. Because if we think about it, we have to be able to think, we have to be able to see, move, reproduce. Each of these tasks requires certain types of cells. So here on the right hand you'll see a diagram of different types of cells. And remember, I said overall there's more than 200 different types, but here we've only got about maybe 10 different types displayed. But if you think about, and right here you can see an example of an eye. An eye would allow us to be able to see, but to be able to see we need to have, for example, nerve cells that make up that eye, also eye cells, and even muscle cells. So an eye itself will have lots of different types of cells, and they will all work together to allow us to see. The same with the heart. Right? The heart has to pump. The heart will need nerve cells, it will need muscle cells, it will need different types of cells to be able to perform its function. So in the human body we have 80 trillion cells, and over those 80 trillion cells, most of them are specialized, which means they all have a certain function. They're all going to come together to basically make sure that we can digest food, right? We can see, we can move, and that's why we call ourselves a multicellular living thing, because we have many different types of cells that we need to perform our very complex range of functions. Now, we are only one example of a multicellular living thing, but basically just imagine any living thing which is not microscopic, so anything that we can see with our naked eye would be multicellular. So non-microscopic tend to be multicellular, and examples of these would be plants. So these are the plants would all be multicellular. Also, most animals, or all animals, an elephant or a horse or a bird, these would also be multicellular. They wouldn't just have one cell, they have many different types of cells. Insects as well. Insects are also multicellular, and so on and so forth. So multicellular are usually quite big, and they're going to be made up of many different types of cells, and overall they're going to have usually trillions of cells. And I'll show you a quick video where I recorded myself going through one example of a multicellular organism. This would be an example of a living thing, the bird you can see here, that is not just made up of one cell, but actually has many, many billions of cells. This would be a multicellular living thing because it has billions of cells. And it's also important that they're all different types of cells, because this bird will have to be able to see, eat, fly, move. And for all these functions, there's a different type of cell that allows it to do that function. So it's going to be a multicellular living thing. It's got billions of cells, and it will also have specialized cells that allow it to do all of its important functions. Right, so if I go closer, you might be able to see that this bird will have to also think, and then act. So hopefully you'll be able to see it look at me, and then fly away, because each of those tasks requires a different cell to be able to do what it has to. So you just, at least so you saw it fly away. So remember, this bird, and a bird or anything that is not microscopic, would be an example of a multicellular living thing that will have different types of cells to perform all those different types of functions that it has to do on a daily basis.